Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. We have a lot to cover in today's video, but we're going to try to cover it as quickly as possible. So, number one, basketball team's coming off of a big win versus St. Peter's in the first round of March Madness, and we're going to be seeing Texas tomorrow. So, there's some good storylines there. Again, we're going to be covering that pretty briefly. And also, our baseball team is kicking off their three-game series versus Ole Miss up in Knoxville, starting tonight at 6:30. It's going to be on SEC Network Plus. And I think that you may be able to find it on ESPN2 or ESPN3, but don't quote me on that. And obviously, we had to talk about spring practice. All right, we're off today, but we will be back tomorrow. We've got a lot of big visitors coming in town, this weekend. And really, we've had some big ones come in town this week. So we'll kind of touch on that. And I'll also just kind of go through our 22 incoming guys, right? Whether it's from high school or whether it's from that transfer portal. And I'll just give you like a little brief breakdown on what I've seen and heard from each individual player since we've been practicing for the first 3 days. But before we get into that, do us a really big favor. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we're going to kick it off with the basketball team in March Madness. We won 83-49 over St. Peter's last night. And, man, it's always big because we saw what happened to Kentucky versus Oakland. You can lose in these games, so it's a big deal that this team was able to come out and get a little bit of confidence. Let's take a look at what the scoring was for our volunteers. Number one, if you look down at the bottom as a team, we shot 51% from the field. Y'all know that that's big for me. I felt like we had to shoot at a much higher clip. We've been shooting somewhere in those lower 30s over the past 3 or 4 games. So that's good to see, and I don't care who it is against. And we shot about 46% from three, 72% from the free throw line. So I really like what I'm seeing so far. Let's take a look at the individual players. Number one, DK led us in scoring with 23 points. He shot 8 of 15. 4 of 8 from 3 points. And, that's 50%. So I like to see that. Hopefully he will continue to play with that level of confidence that we've pretty much seen throughout the entire season. And Jonas Adu had a good game. He had 15 points. Love to see it. Zakai Ziegler had 11 points, and that's big. I think that we need to get him closer to about that 15-point mark because we need guys like Santi and Josiah Jordan-James to step up, as far as scoring goes. And Santi had 6 points. He shot the ball 5 times and needs to shoot a little bit more. I like to see him get maybe closer to about 8 to 9 shots a game. Okay. Just kind of shoot more volume if you're not getting as many points. And that's going to be very critical for us as we continue to go through March Madness. And Josiah Jordan-James had 0 points, but he, was able to affect the game in other ways. And so is Santi, right? It's not all about scoring. I think that as a team, okay, we played well last night. So that's, very, very encouraging. And we've also got a few players coming off of the bench in Tobe Awaka with 8 points. That's going to be big for us. I think especially, as we get, if we get matched up against a team like Purdue, we're going to need for him to be a player that steps up. So that level of confidence that hopefully he has coming out of this game will be very, very critical for us moving forward. And then JP Estrella, that's my dog right there. He has 6 points, and that makes me feel good. I don't know if that's a season high for him, but, you definitely want to see him coming into his own as a scorer because he does a pretty good job, just as far as effort goes. There's still some things that he needs to get cleaned up, and he will. Hopefully, he will be able to grow up quickly for us. Now, let's take a look here. Gainey, who's another really big player for us, especially coming off of that bench. He had 6 points, and it just looks like he was very efficient as a scorer. And Meshack had 4 points, and he was pretty efficient, right? So he shot about 25%. And, you want to get him shooting at a much higher clip, especially coming off of that bench. And we were kind of wondering, will he come off of the bench or will he start? But that's what the game looked like pretty much for us versus St. Peter's. All right, now on to our second round matchup versus Texas, which is Rick Barnes' old team. So that's another storyline for us to pay close attention to. And, I think that Rick Barnes is all Vol right now, and I know that he would definitely like to beat his old program. But Texas is coming off of a 56-44 win versus Colorado State. So that should give Tennessee fans a little bit of hope coming into this one if you are concerned for any reason. Now, they do have some good scores, and, they've got some good players, but we'll just kind of take a look at this matchup right here pretty quickly. They're ranked 30th. We're ranked 7th. Record versus top 25 opponents. They're 3-8. We're 6-4. Strength of schedule. We're 5th. They're 33rd. And points per game. We're scoring about 80. They're scoring about 76. And we are limiting opponents to about 68. And they are limiting opponents to about 69 points. So far, you could tell that this whole thing really does favor Tennessee. And also in the last 10 games, they're 6-4, we're 7-3. Now on down to the team statistics. We're shooting at about 44% from the field. They're shooting at about 47. And then from three, they're shooting 36%. We're shooting 34%. And from the free throw line, they're actually better than us right there as well. 76% versus about 75%. And on down to the key players, we all know ours is going to be DK, and theirs is Max Abesmith. And he looks pretty good. Okay. He's a guy that can score in different ways. He's a really good shooter. Let's go ahead and pull up what their team individual statistics look like. All right. So starting off with Max Abesmith, and he's shooting at about 42, 43% from the field. He's a really good free throw shooter. He's right at about 90%, and he's shooting 36% from three. So he's only about 6 feet tall, but that's a guy that we'll definitely have to close out on. And then the next player, who is Dylan Daisu, I don't know if I'm saying his name correct or not, but he's averaging about 15.7 points per game. And look at his field goal percentage, 48%, but look at his 3-point percentage, 46%. I think that that could end up being some sort of a problem for us, especially if we have some trouble staying in front of their smaller, more athletic guards. Especially if they can bring him out, to the 3-point line. Okay, you take Jonas Adu out there with them, then all of a sudden we can become a little bit more susceptible to those easy drive buckets. And we've just got to play really solid defense. I think that's going to be the key to this game. Now on to Tyrese Hunter, who I also believe is about 6 feet tall. He is shooting at 45%, and he's shooting threes at 34%. So again, man, this is a team that shoots at a very, very high clip. Now, Dylan Mitchell, okay, he is averaging about 10 points per game. He's shooting at around 60%. And I believe that he is 6'8" or 6'9". And same thing for Dylan Daisu. I think that they're both, around that mark. So we're going to be a much bigger team, okay, than Texas is. And I think that should definitely help us out just in being able to defend them. But they've got some guys that can go. And, we won't go through everyone on this list, but y'all can see it, right? Like y'all see how efficient they are as scorers. And, it's crazy that they only scored 56 points last night. So there's something to be said about that. They tend to play maybe a little bit slower, and that could possibly be why they didn't score as many points. Colorado State plays some solid defense, but it's not great. And I also don't think that Texas plays the best defense, but they can, kind of lock down at times and at points. I just feel like if we do what we normally do on defense, then we'll be fine. And then outside of that, we have got to score. DK's got to be on. Okay, ZZ's got to be on. Adu, all of our guys that normally score need to continue to do that. But if we can add, like we keep on talking about, if we can add in a guy like Santi, if we can add in Triple J as scoring threats, and I'm going to go back to what I said a couple of weeks ago. Give us 8 points each. If they give us 8 points each, we will win this game, I think, by probably 10 or more points. But hey, it's March Madness, and you never know who's going to show up on any given night. All right, now on the football news, Caleb Beasley, who is an incoming freshman at cornerback, fractured his fibula yesterday in practice, and he's going to miss the rest of spring, but he will be back for summer and for fall camp as well. So that's tough to see, obviously, with a young guy like that who we were expecting some pretty big things from, maybe not as a starter this season, but as a good depth piece. He's a guy that came in with about college ready size, and he talked about, hey, I already know this playbook, and he's the son of a coach and all those types of things. So for me, I was looking, I said, man, look, this is a kid that has a really good shot to come in here and get, thrown into the mix and actually be able to rotate into some games. And it just sucks to hear that. And hopefully we don't have too many injuries coming out of spring, but that's just part of football. The great news is he will be back for summer. So, I'm excited for him to kind of make up for that lost time. Now, we've had some pretty good visitors coming up on campus, and, we've got some rumors of some more visitors coming up, especially this weekend, which might end up being probably the second biggest weekend, okay, for us as far as the high school players coming up and visiting us throughout all of spring. And this list that y'all are seeing is straight from VolQuest. These are the guys that we are anticipating will be up this weekend, and there's a lot of really good names that you have to love in this mix. Now, we do have a really big visitor that is expected to be coming up for the orange and white game, and that is Faison Brandon, who is the 4-star 2026 quarterback that everyone seems to be in on. I think he's going to end up being a 5-star at some point. He's definitely one of the best that I've seen. He kind of puts me in the mind of like a Hendon Hooker with a little bit better skill set, right? I mean, he's got that really soft touch to his passes, but he's also mobile. So I think he fits his offense literally to a T. And, we talked about this, I want to say last week, that Georgia's coming after him now. They seem to be kind of whoever we end up offering, they're trying to offer him to. And I mean, Georgia doesn't know what to do with the mobile quarterback by any means. They're going to stand him back there in the pocket and say, hey, just stand still. And, I'd listen, please don't get me started on Georgia today. But anyway, that's big. And, we'll have several other guys coming up for the orange and white game. I believe David Sanders will be up here as well, but we'll be covering that a little bit more as we get closer to that time. Now, I want to go ahead and pull up the list of our players in the 2024 class that came in either as high school players or as transfers. And I'm just going to do like a brief, quick little rundown on what I've seen and heard about these players so far. And the first player is going to be Mr. Mike Matthews. So, first and foremost, Mike's got number 89, which is kind of a tight end number, but it's also a number for maybe like tougher wide receivers. And it just seems like Coach Heupel tends to give these numbers to the players that he's expecting so much from coming out of high school. And that's what I think, he gave that number to Mike Matthews for. But again, like I said, that number is for some tougher wide receivers too. So I think that that's kind of telling in what Coach Heupel is expecting from Mike. I haven't heard anything bad about him. Sounds like he's doing a really good job just getting acclimated to college football, to practice. And he's looked good in the clips that I saw. So everything pretty much is status quo for the 5-star Mike Matthews. Next player is Braylon Staley. Braylon is one of those guys that everyone loves. Okay, we've heard some good things from the coaching staff, and we've heard a lot from those insiders. People are expecting for him to be a guy that will contribute a lot in 2024. But we kind of said that coming into this whole deal. Him playing slot right there behind Squirrel. Okay, I don't think that there's going to be much drop off. Obviously, Squirrel is going to be a lot more acclimated to this offense and to SEC football. So Braylon still has to catch up in that perspective, but we like what we've been seeing from him early on. We saw a really tough catch that he made with the balls literally skipping off of the ground. So that kind of stuff is big. He's also just a tough, physical young man. He's explosive. He runs really good routes. So looking forward to him this season, and definitely just in hearing what he's going to be doing on Wednesday in our first scrimmage. Next, we have Boo Carter. So Boo Carter is one of those guys that, offense, defense, special teams, we're already hearing about it and everyone's raving about him. I heard Austin Price say, hey, this is a guy that if he gets onto the field, he probably ain't coming back off. So he's doing a really good job, and we like the way that he looks physically. Okay, he looks like he's already physically ready to come out here and play, which is big. And just as far as the skill set goes, and I'm just talking about in the secondary, he looks the part for sure. I mean, I think that maybe he could play safety. That right there, we won't know until those pads come on, until in that scrimmage. We'll see. Is he physical in the scrimmage or not? Now, if he's physical there, then yeah, he could definitely play safety. But probably star might be the best position for him, especially because Jordan Thomas has been a little bit injury prone. We're hoping that he can fight that this season. But yeah, Boo Carter's one to keep a very close eye on. And next is Peyton Lewis, who isn't participating in spring practice, so we can skip him. Caleb Beasley, we've spoke about some. He is injured at this point. We haven't seen too many clips out of him, but it is something to note that he was able to pick up that playbook pretty quickly. Now on to Jake Merklinger, who I think physically looks the part. Okay, we've talked about that several times. Now, as far as what he's doing out there from a throwing perspective and as a quarterback, period, haven't seen a whole lot of it. I've heard some kind of like mixed things about him, but he's been accurate. I think he throws a very catchable ball, and he's going to come along. He's still very early in this whole thing. I'm not worried about him by any means, but we'll know more once they scrimmage. That's how, we'll know once those bullets start to fly and once everything is really live. Even though it won't be live for him necessarily as far as getting hit, but that's more of a live look for these quarterbacks. And if he can perform well, then yeah, I mean, we're going to be just fine. Really, either way, he's still got plenty of time before he has to play. So I really like what I've seen thus far from Jake Merklinger. Next up is Max Anderson, and he physically looks good as well. Clearly, I mean, these are true freshmen, so he's going to have to continue to get bigger and stronger. But I like that he didn't come in sloppy. Okay, he looks like he came in really good shape, and I think that there's a good foundation for this staff to kind of build on. Now, I believe that he's working at guard, so that's about where we had him slotted at, and I absolutely love that. We'll see what he can do just as far as getting better throughout this entire season. I think that's more of where he's at. Not necessarily a guy that we would be counting on to actually play this season, unless, God forbid, somebody ends up going down, knock on wood. But yeah, I mean, just as far as him coming in as a freshman, very impressed so far with the little bit of fundamental things that I've seen him do. All right. And down here, we have William Satterwhite. So I haven't seen any clips of William yet. I haven't really heard anything about him either, outside of the fact that he's working at center pretty much exclusively. And at some point, I would have to anticipate that he's going to get cross-trained in some other positions. I also heard from P yesterday that he's a lot smaller than Vyson Lang, but Vyson Lang is huge. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 330. So we're not really expecting for Mr. Satterwhite to come in and be just a huge player because he's playing center. Usually your center is going to be about your smallest offensive lineman. And I think that that's because the quarterback has to be able to see over them like they're right in front of him. So, I'm fine with his size, with his stature. And I know that he's going to be really good. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he does once we get into scrimmage time. Next up is Edwin Spillman. All right, now finally somebody that we've got to see some clips of. Number one, it looks like he's bigger than Jeremiah Lander, and we know that Jeremiah Lander was big enough to play SEC ball last year. I also like what I've seen from him kind of going through some of the footwork drills and things like that. He's got some really quick feet. He looks fast. He looks explosive. And he's one that we've got to definitely watch out for to get thrown into the mix, right, of the linebackers. I think that he could work himself up into that three deep. He looks really, really good. And I think that he's just really bringing a lot more talent to that entire linebacking core. He's a better athlete, okay, than what we saw out there for the most part last season. And he's a thumper. All the guys that I'm expecting to get out on the field, play with speed, okay, play with passion, and they're going to try to hit you. They're going to try to knock your block off. That's what we need. That's what we love. So Edwin Spillman, again, we're going to keep on kind of touching on the scrimmage that's coming up next Wednesday, but that's what this is all about. Okay. So far we haven't seen him in full pads. We won't be back in the full pads until tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, that's what really matters. Once those pads come on, how do you play, from a very physical contact perspective? Because it's one thing to look good just running around. That's just half the battle. Can you bring the funk whenever that time comes? So next guy is Kellen Lindstrom, who I got to see some of. Okay, he looks good physically. He looks big. Okay, he looks fast. He looks explosive. Pretty much everything that we said from his high school film, we're seeing that out here in college. Same thing for him. Same thing for literally everybody. We've got to see how they do once those pads come on. Can you be physical? Okay, whenever it counts the most. Now, Marcus Gorey Jr., he looks like he's gained some weight. Haven't really seen him go through any drills, but expecting for him to be one that wants to get in on the physicality of football. So I'm not too much worried about him. Don't expect for him necessarily at this point in the game to be a player that would go out there and get some real playing time. But you never know. We still have a long way to go. And then Jesse Perry, who's playing offensive tackle for us, I've liked what I've seen from him so far. Okay, he physically looks well put together. And I don't know if he necessarily is going to be a guy that can play this season again unless someone gets hurt, but he's actually impressed me more than I thought he would just in these first few days. Now on down to Idris Farouk. We've kind of seen him go through some drills at safety, and his hips are a little bit stiff. He's probably going to be a guy that is primarily special teams. And maybe year 2, year 3, he can kind of start to fight to actually get out on the field. But all in all, I mean, I think that he's another one that how physical can you be? That will really help, especially playing safety. That means a lot. Can you be physical enough to get out on the field? And then we've got Gage Ginther, who I think looks really good. Now, he's already starting to get moved around from tackle to guard. We saw the clip kind of earlier on where it was him playing left tackle and then it was Sham playing at left guard. But I think that he physically looks good. Okay. Now, I don't think I mentioned this, but Jesse Perry is playing at tackle. Those are two guys that we've seen more clips of. And, I really, really love where their foundation is, just their technique, their fundamentals. They didn't come in sloppy, they're coming in willing to work and anxious and all that good stuff. So I think that, these are two guys that we can really look forward to maybe towards the end of the season as potentially being some depth pieces, but really next year, I mean, they should be fighting for some serious playing time. All right, now let's scroll it on down. These players right here are not on campus yet, but I just want to keep it up so that y'all can see the influx of talent that is still yet to come up on campus. We are absolutely loaded this year. And I'm just going to point this out that I feel like Jordan Ross is a player that is going to be thrown into the mix. We talked about that a few times on the channel as well. Now, on to the transfers. Jackson Moore, we haven't seen a whole lot out of him, but just in some of the winter workout stuff, it looks like he's a dog. And I'm definitely looking forward to him as a player. I don't know how much he'll get to get out on the field this season, but he will get thrown into the mix at some point. And again, man, there's really no drop off. Now on to Lance Hurd. And y'all already know how I feel about him. I mean, just prototype everything. He looks really good, long arms, physical. I mean, very, very physical. Once he makes contact with people, you see their heads throwing back. That's something that we also saw in his film breakdown, and he's continuing to do that. So he's going to be great in pass protection. He's going to be great as a run blocker, all that type of stuff. And we've also kind of seen him being a leader and teaching some of these young guys, hey, man, do this, do that. Just showing them some of the little finite details. And that goes such a long way. I'm going to tell you in football, I mean, some of those old school tricks, some of those veteran moves that can help you out a lot. And I love the fact that he's willing to share that with our players this early on in the process. So obviously we're going to be looking for a lot from him this season and hopefully the next. And next up is Miles Kittelman, who is our tight end from Alabama. I haven't really got to see him play too much, but we did also see him in winter workouts, and he looked like he was really straining there. You have to love that. Jalen McMurray, who I saw a couple of clips from him in practice, and I've heard that Coach Martinez had to get on him for not giving maximum effort in a rep. So never want to see that again. Hopefully, Coach Martinez was able to nip that in the bud. But he's another one that you would definitely anticipate he should be able to get thrown into the mix somewhere in that secondary. I believe that right now he's working at corner. Chris Brazel has looked great. We watched the video with him on the players' lounge. We see how long he is. You see how big he is once you get up close to him. He's had a couple of problems. I want to say maybe double catching or double clutching that football. And we saw that some with Dante Thornton last year too. We don't want to have a repeat of that. Maybe, once the pads come on, once he starts to get hit, going into week 3 is when we could expect for him to be a little bit more consistent as a pass catcher, but he's going to be special for sure. Now, Jermod McCoy, who is a dog, we saw him looking really, really good in practice, just kind of going through all the different drills. Physically, I think he may be the thickest corner. He's at about 6'1, almost 6'2, long arms, and he's going to be a stud for us. I love what I've seen from him so far. Now, Kobe Thomas is the next one. And so far, he's looked great. Okay, going through all the drills. His footwork is nice. His hips are great. He gets in and out of breaks very well. He's got good hands. Sounds like he's a leader, too. He's probably about 6'2, 210, 215. We heard, I want to say it was Brent Hubbs or it might have been Austin Price. Somebody over there at VolQuest talked about yesterday they were doing a, like blocking drill versus some running backs and versus some tight ends. And they said, man, Kobe Thomas was laying the wood. Okay, you can tell he's going to be a very physical player. That's so critical playing safety, playing in the middle of that defense. You have to have that. And he's passionate about Tennessee. He, grew up as a Tennessee fan. Going to be really good in coverage. I just think that he's a guy that could end up being one of the best safeties that we've had, and I'm not going to say that he is Eric Berry, but I would say since Eric Berry, just because he's going to be such a good playmaker, because he's going to play with so much effort, and that's where that's where the playmaking really comes from, especially on defense. It's just playing with effort, being around the football because you're straining to get there all the time. So I'm really looking forward to him, and I would say for sure. I mean, if you don't already know that name, Kobe Thomas, you need to get to know it because he's going to be one of the best players on this team this season. All right, and let's scroll it up a little bit right here. We've got Holden Stays, and I believe, is that it? Yep. So Holden Stays will be the last one. We haven't really seen him, okay, at all. The one thing that I can say is that he looks big. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing how, he's coming along and getting adjusted to the system. All right, so that's going to be it for this video, but thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. Please make sure, as always, to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.